Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining us for our Muharram series. My name is Sumaya Kaku. I'm the Secretary for the Board of Directors of the organization. For this year, we will be streaming lectures by Shaykh Arif Abdul Hussain, followed by a live Q&A session. All videos will be posted on our YouTube channel. We will be using menti.com to enable people to submit questions. The code is 1765356. This information will also be provided on the screen closer to the time. We are always open to any comments that will help us grow to better serve our community, so please let us know if there's anything else that we can improve upon. We would like to begin the program with a recitation from the Holy Quran by Atia Ahsan and Sukaina Doji.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
I begin in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. O you who believe, seek assistance through patience and prayer. Surely Allah is with the patient. And do not speak of those who are slain in Allah's way as dead. Nay, they are alive, but you do not perceive. And when we will most certainly try you with somewhat of fear and hunger and loss of property and lives and fruits, and give good news to the patient, who, when a misfortune befalls them, say, surely we are from Allah, and to Him we will surely return. Those are they on whom are blessings and mercy from their Lord, and those are the followers of the right course.
Thank you very much for that recitation. We would like to now start the lecture. Shaykh Arif Abdul Hussain is the founder and director of the Al-Mahdi Institute in Birmingham, United Kingdom. He has been at the forefront of developing and delivering advanced Islamic studies for over 2 decades, tailored towards training students to become capable of addressing the needs of contemporary societies. Please can we welcome him with a salawat.
يوم الدين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي أما بعد السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمسابنا بأبي عبد الله الحسين عليه الصلاة والسلام. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing us to congregate yet again in the remembrance of our most beloved Imam Hussein, and through him to seek inspiration on how to lead a meaningful life and how to attain the purpose of our humanly existence on the face of this earth, looking at his blessed divine example. The series of talks for this year are entitled Discovering God. We will be looking at the nature of our yearning to find meaning, to find purpose. And we will be seeing that that purpose and that meaning is entailed in arrival at God, or in the embracing of God, or the emergence of God from within our confines in our human context. In that, we will talk briefly about the nature of God and the whole process of devotion, and how devotion and devotional practices within Islam, although not restricted to Islam, devotional practices of every faith. But we will be talking about the prominent devotional practices of Islam, how they assist us in the arrival at the state of godliness. With that being said, we look at ourselves in a very fundamental condition that is there within us as human beings, and indeed within existence at large. There is this deep-seated yearning to know who I am. Who am I? Even after worshipping God for 70 years, serving humanity, there is this question that prods away at the depths of our heart. And we are brought face to face with this particular unknown. Who am I? What is it all about? What is going on? Surely there should be something far more deeper than this. Surely there must be some substantive meaning. Surely there must be some depth to my existence. Surely there must be a real sense of life. What is happening? Who am I? That is a fundamental question at the soul of every human being. It is as if the Spirit of God that is blown within the soul or within the chest of the children of Adam is yearning itself. If looked at carefully, every aspect of existence is dynamic. It's in motion. It wants to find itself. It wants to know itself. Can you not see this beautiful motion? There is no arrest to this motion within existence. Everything is fueled by this question, who am I? Everything wants to reveal itself. And in the process of revelation, we see this wonderful evolution. Even without arriving at that understanding of who I am, we are growing and evolving as a human society. Intellectually, we have now cast our reins upon the lofty heavens, and we have dived within the deep oceans, looking, searching, exploring. We inevitably are in search, and in that process we are evolving. But that fundamental question still plods away deep within us. Who am I? When we look at existence in its entirety, now we are beginning to see that, of course, this existence is conscious to itself. It is alive to itself. The way in which it is functioning, the dynamism, the meticulous balance, the way everything is arranged. It is next to impossible that this would have come about in randomness. There is infinite possibility of it going wrong, and infinitely it's going right. At every point, there are infinite possibilities of things going wrong. At every point, it is going right. It is as if everything has a mind of its own. The whole being somehow is a living being. Even the atheistic thinkers now are arriving at this point that every atom has consciousness and a mind of its own. Everything is functioning in a way that is unexplainable. The Quran says, "In min shay'in illa yusabbihu bihamdi rabbih." There is nothing but that it sings the eulogy and the praise of its Lord, but you understand not. And then the Quran exclaims, "Huwa al-awwal wal-akhir wal-zahir wal-batin, wa huwa bi kulli shay'in alim." He is the first, he is the last, he is the apparent, he is the hidden. The Quran paints this picture of God as if it is nothing but the display of the divine. Your eyes are unable to see, but within you there is something that is wanting to recognize this truth. Take the plunge, go for it, ask the question, what is going on? Who am I? For until and unless you ask the question, the journey in the realist sense does not commence. A human being is being dragged to his God. Allah says, you will meet me on the day of Qiyamah, whether you like it or not. He's elusive, he's not to be found. You go to the furthest parts of the galaxy, there is no God. In fact, you go to Sidratul Muntaha, you will not find God. ليس كمثله شيء, he says. There is nothing like him. لم يكن له كفوا أحد. No matter where you travel, no matter how much you exercise your minds, you will not find him. But why is there this yearning, this burning desire to find out who I am and who he is? We look at Quran once again. The Quran gives a phenomenal description. Allah nuru samawati wal ard. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. We look at it again. And Allah says, Allah waliyul ladhina amanu yukhrijuhum min adh-dhulumati ila an-nur. Allah is the saintly friend of those who bring faith in him, i.e. those who direct themselves to him. He purges them of darkness and brings them into a state of enlightenment. What the verses of the Quran are saying is that our motion is towards the embracing of all light. And the inner light is yearning the light of all lights. But I am in a state of darkness. And I need to give myself to light in its entirety. Again, we read in the Quran, the verses of the Quran say, on that day of Qiyamah, the people who have arrived at a state of felicity, you will see their light shine from their faces and from their hands. In another place it says that these people will turn to God and plead to God and say, Oh Allah, akmil lana nurana. Oh Allah, complete for us our light. From the Quranic perspective, it seems that for us to find answer to that primordial question and to that yearning, prodding, and query that is inside us is for us to arrive in the state of light, not enlightenment, but to become light itself. To become light itself, therefore, means to allow God to prevail. How beautiful is the way it's been explained that, oh soul, you are the awakening of the divine in that limitation of your humanity. If only you knew who you are and what you are. Bring to mind Rumi's words. He says, oh man, if indeed you understood your own rank, if only you knew what you were, that brilliant sun that you admire with such wonder and amazement, the light that will shine through you is so brilliant in its luminosity that the brilliant sun within the depth of the sky shall disappear, shying away from the brilliance of your light. This is how grand you are. So it seems finding God is not a question of finding God in a place, nor mentally, but it is a question of allowing God to prevail, to give ourselves over to him. Let the author himself display his own self unrestrictedly through the human individual. So we ask, well, who is God and what is God? How phenomenal is the being of God. At once he says, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. There is nothing like him. لَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٍ. There is no equal to him. The Blessed Prophet says, O Lord, zidni tahayyuran. Increase me in my bewilderment. For the more I know you, the more baffled I stand before you. For the more I know you, the greater is the mystery that enshrouds you. Ali Salamullah alayhi exclaims, there is no attribute that can be assigned to him. There is no description that can contain him. How can you ever know him when that level of God dawns upon the mind and the heart? The majesty of God is so brilliant that when the heart gets a glimpse of his majesty, it begins to tremble in awe and in terror. It sees the nothingness of its own self. It sees unworthiness of its own self and a state of alienation from God because he's so majestic, so brilliant, so unknowable. The Imam said, La ya'lam kayfa huwa illa hu. No one knows how he is save he himself. Imam Ali in one place says that there are proximate angels who are committed to the devotion of God. They are so absorbed and immersed in the devotion of God that they are unaware that Adam has been created or something like the earth exists. The radiance of the divine overpowers their souls and their hearts. They are content at worshiping God. The Imam says, if God were to impart a single ray of his beauty upon the hearts and the souls of these angels as God is, they would die in regret at not having known God at all and not having worshipped God at all. Such is the majesty of God. And at the same time, look at the description of God. At once, he is the transcendent, the unknowable. Kul huwa, say he who, the unknown, the unknowable he. The creator of whatever you cannot fathom. The creation in itself is ineffable. You can't understand the creation. Even our physical existence in the five-dimensional scheme, three spatial extensions and time and space, even that, the clusters of galaxies and whatever is there, is so massive and so infinite and expanding at such a colossal rate that the human imagination cannot even imaginatively capture it. Then think about the creator of the multiverse and the multidimensional, and think about the one who has created what we cannot know, which is non-material, and beyond non-material, what the angels cannot even fathom. At once he is the majestic one, the unknowable one, and at once he is the imminent, the proximate. Allah says, "Huwa ma'akum aynama kuntum." He is with you wherever you may be. وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبْ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. And we are closer to him than his own jugular veins. Allah comes between the man and his own soul, and his own heart and his own thoughts. This is how proximate he is. فَإِنَّمَا تَوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Wherever you will turn, you will see there the face of God. He is immediately available, and yet he is transcendent. Imam Ali most brilliantly explains this particular notion of God. He says he is with everything, yet he touches nothing. He is other than everything, yet there is no space and there is no distance between him and anything. How do you imagine such a God? We are forced to conclude that he in himself cannot be known. And as far as the creation is concerned and existence is concerned, there is nothing but he, the Blessed One. How wonderfully Imam Ali said, I have never seen a thing, but I have seen Allah beyond it, below it, before it, and behind it. How beautifully Hussain says, O Lord, should I seek proof for your existence through your handiwork and your creation, when I see your divine hand at work? Can your handiwork be more brilliant in manifesting you than you yourself, who I see so clearly? What vision did they get? It is not true to say everything is God, but it is definitely true to say nothing is other than God. You will never say that the momentous waves are the ocean, but you will always be able to say that the waves are nothing other than the ocean. For the ocean is the unknown. The waves are known, yet they are nothing other than what ocean wishes to reveal of itself. That is the nature of God. But what do we understand from the nature of God? And what God are we drawn to? God explains himself at the level of our existence. He says he is Allah, Rabbul Alamin. He is Allah, the Lord of the whole of this existence. The name Allah is the mother of all names in terms of our context. It is not the mother of all names as Allah is. He is the nameless one. He is He, the one who cannot be named nor described. He is beyond words and names. He cannot be captured by anything. But in terms of our existence, He is Allah. He is Rahman. The word Allah signifies a status to which everything aspires. And a status that organizes everything in its own place. So Allah is a description of He in the realm of our existence, towards which everything turns for its own completion. So whether we like it or not, we are yearning God. Ya ayyuhal insan innaka kadihun ila rabbika kadhan famulaqi. O human, whether you agree or disagree to the existence of God, you are being dragged to your God in a way that you shall surely meet with Him. No one can resist Allah. And how is it possible to resist Him when in every direction that you flee, you will end with God? How phenomenal is God? So come of age, now surrender. Ibrahim immediately changes his tone. He no longer says, my Lord. He says, now I surrender to the Lord of the worlds. Now he arrives at that beauty untarnished. So the Lord of the world is Allah. But within the world, Allah governs every individual aspect of the world as the personal Lord of everything. Imam Sadiq said, the ant assumes its Lord to have two antennas. Every individual creation is vested with the light of the author, and every individual existence reflects the author within its own context. Isn't that phenomenal? The ant can never understand my God. I can never understand the God of the ant until I accomplish myself. I will never understand the God of the Blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just as Abu Bakr could not understand the God of Salman. Can you not see this? It's a personal, private journey to our own Lord the way we understand Him. At once, He is the Lord of humanity, the Lord of the animal kingdom, the Lord of the plant kingdom, and everything displays its author in the most beautiful way it can. And the author addresses every one of its handiwork in its own context. Here we want to resolve a thing. We will say, how can the most beautiful God have an enemy? It does not befit God to have enemy. See this. Has anybody asked this question? It must be springing up in the minds from time to time. How can God be so vengeful, so wrathful, so angry? Does it come to mind or not? It does, doesn't it? But God, you are God. This is the pettiness of my existence, that I want revenge. That I say, how dare you say this? I will fling you in the pits of hell. This is me, not you, oh God. Has anybody wondered why God says these things? Because He operates with us at our level. He has authored us, and the author reflects our nature through His nature. Amazing, isn't it? Amazing, the way God is. He has a friend, He has enemies. He is merciful, He is vengeful. He gives, He withholds. In our context, God is expressing our nature. But in expressing our nature, He is regulating it as well. Think about it. As human beings, when we threaten, what is that threat based on? On the want of greater good. Can you not see that? The impelling force is love and goodness and productivity. In the way as a method comes the threat. When a father and a parent and a teacher, they penalize and ground their children, are they doing it through hatred? Or are they doing it as a means of love? You will see that these qualities that we say are less than befitting for God, because they are not God's qualities, they are our qualities that God is reflecting in a language that we understand. Is that coming through? We yearn women, so He says you've got women in paradise. We yearn rivers, there are rivers in paradise. We yearn honey and wine, they're all in paradise. Oh man, you are worth more than women and wine and rivers of honey and trees. How cheaply you have sold yourself. You are the reflection of the author himself. If the author within an instance can create the lofty paradise, imagine how beautiful the author himself must be. When you can have the author himself, and you can author infinitely, what cause do you have with the lofty 7 paradises? All of it comes to naught when you taste the pleasure of His love. So here Maulana Rumi explains that you will see God's attributes as being attributes of clemency and harshness, mercy and wrath, majesty and love. But you will always find that in dealing with human beings, God's merciful attributes prevail. وَرَحْمَتُهُ وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. Yes, He wants justice to be done. Yet He says, I can forgive whoever I want. Yes, He can take revenge. Yes, He says. Yet He says, my mercy envelopes everything. So when we look at the Lord of humanity, we see the Lord of humanity as we are, so that we can relate to the Lord of humanity. Once we begin to relate to the Lord of humanity, there opens up another door of private, personal belonging to God. He says, I am so lofty, but I am so near that if you call me, I will respond to you. If you ask me, I will give to you. If you trust me, I will be enough for you. If you forgive, I shall forgive you. If you feed others, I shall feed you. If you give shade to a homeless person, I shall give you shade. When you open up to Him personally, privately, He opens another door for a personal, intimate belonging with Himself. If we can understand this point, this personal, intimate belonging with God, when we arrive at that level of Rabbi, my Lord. Now the phenomenal thing here is that Shams Tabrizi, when he met the scholars of fiqh, and they're saying that if you don't do wudu this way, it's not accepted. and your prayer is not accepted, and then you will stand in debt on the day of Qiyamah, and then you will go to hell. Think about it. You don't do wudu properly, salah is not accepted. If you don't do salah properly, you have a debt. If you have a debt, you will be questioned on the day of Qiyamah. When you will be questioned on the day of Qiyamah, you will not be able to respond. With the debt on your head, you're going to hell. That was the reasoning in jurisprudence. Shams looked at them and said, you indeed worship a vengeful Lord, and he will indeed burn you. Imagine. Your Lord is the way you are. Once the great Ibn Arabi was sitting somewhere, and he said, your Lord lies beneath my feet. They threw stones at him and chased him away. Somebody said that Ibn Arabi cannot utter such loose words. So he went and dug at the place where Ibn Arabi sat. And he found a treasure trove filled with gold and gemstones. And he smiled. He said, yes, Ibn Arabi was saying they worship this. He who worships the God of paradise shall end up in paradise. He who worships the God of hell and becomes hellish himself goes to hell. He who worships the God of Hussain becomes Hussain. At that level of the worship of personal God, if we can understand that it is His beautiful light calling us to Him, and if we can understand that within the threat is love, that within anger is pleasure, then we begin to become like God. You will say, this is a grand intellectual. This is a phenomenal scholar. But when you look at a saint, obviously I'm not going to say like the one in front of you, you will say, this is a godly creature. Beyond the scholar, beyond the leader, is godliness. When you look at the blessed prophets of God, they are filled with knowledge. They are courageous people. They are indeed charitable. You will not find it appropriate to attribute them with any one of these qualities. If you have to attribute them with one quality that explains who they are, you will come out with one statement. They are godly. And that godliness encapsulates the beauty of their being, because they are radiating with God. So when we find the personal God, and in devotion, when we begin to give ourselves away to God, then God begins to prevail. So the question is not finding God. The question is not conceptualizing God. The question is one of allowing God to emerge from within our beings. And that is only possible when we prefer God above ourselves and give ourselves over to the author. That the author emerges himself. It was never a question of meeting with God in the way we understand. It was never a question of uniting with God. It was always a question of arrival at that state of realization of the already pre-existence of union with the beloved. The only way the wave will meet with the ocean is when the wave gives up trying to be itself. Once it relents, it calms down into the beauty of the unending ocean. And that is the meeting with the beloved, that we let ourselves go. And once we come to that Abrahamic position, then the Lord of the world claims himself. Ana rabbukum a'la. Not the pharaonic sentiment, but godly sentiment. لمن الملك اليوم إلا واحد القهار. The kingdom of the soul has been given over to God. As we commence the narration of Hussain Salamullah alayhi, I will point out that he radiates so brilliantly when the blade appears upon his thirsty neck. Serenity prevails upon him to an extent that it pacifies those around him. The raging daggers and the swords are brought to a halt. The swearing and insults directed to him fall silent. They observe his serenity, and they observe his lips moving in the eulogy of Allah. And they say, by Allah, we have not seen one who is so deprived, so wounded, so thirsty, who has lost everything, whose heart bears uncountable pains. And yet, as he turns upon the dust, about to lose his life, he supplicates to God with such serenity that even our hearts are moved. That was the meeting point of God, or rather the emergence of the beauty of the divine through the being of Hussein. We come to the narration of Karbala. Muawiyah dies. Imam Hussein witnesses 9 years of his imamate under the reign of Muawiyah and 6 months. Muawiyah, at his death, leaves his will to Yazid. I have secured, he says, the oath of allegiance from one and all, save for 3 or 4 people. Hussein ibn Ali, Abdullah bin Umar, and Abdullah bin Zubayr. As far as Abdullah bin Zubayr is concerned, find him at all costs and put him to death before he finds you. As for Abdullah bin Umar, treat him well, and you will find him an ally. As for Hussein ibn Ali, if he comes out in revolt against you, then overpower him. But treat him well, for there is kinship between us. What Muawiyah realized, that if Yazid were to put Imam Hussein to death, that would inevitably lead to such reprisals that would compromise their own kingdom. Muawiyah was quite sharp. Muawiyah, Yazid, after the death of Muawiyah, dispatches a letter to his governor and his cousin, Walid bin Utbah bin Abi Sufyan, and he instructs, Muawiyah has died, I am the Khalifa, extract the oath of allegiance from Hussein. And if he doesn't give it, then overpower him. Imam Hussein is called within the palace at night. The Imam turns to Abbas and Akbar and the Hashimis, and he says, I have been called to the palace of Walid, to the office of Walid. I fear for the worst. Accompany me. If you hear my voice being raised, hesitate not. Come to my aid immediately. Imam Hussein comes to Walid. Walid says, well, Muawiyah has died. Imam Hussein pronounces the words of istirja, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Yazid seeks your bay'ah. Marwan was sitting with Walid. Imam Hussein looked at Walid. He said, would you not rather I paid allegiance in the light of day amidst the congregation of people? Walid said, indeed, return to your home. Marwan said, Walid, if this man leaves right now, he will not come in your control again. Behead him or take allegiance. Imam Hussein raised his voice. How dare you talk about killing me? As his voice is raised, Abbas pushes open the door. The raging lion of Hussein walks in with his sword drawn. Walid is startled, and so is Marwan. They step back. The Bakirin mentioned that Imam Hussein places his hand upon the chest of his lion. And he says, Abbas, control your rage. Imam Hussein returns. The Bakirin often mentioned that Abbas is tearful and sobbing. He comes to Zainab. He looks at Zainab. He said, Walid asked me to pay allegiance to Yazid. Zainab looks into the eyes of Hussein and says, Hussein, so indeed the promise is going to come to pass. And then she hears Abbas. She says, oh Hussein, what has brought my brother to this state? There was a death of threat upon me, O sister. And this is why he sobs so uncontrollably. Imam Hussein comes to the grave of the Blessed Prophet to bid him farewell. He says, oh grandfather, I do not wish to part from your grave, but I am left with no option. These people will find me and put me to death at your grave, and I do not wish for that. As he cried, he fell asleep, and he saw his grandfather. He said, oh grandfather, take me to you and where you are. He said, oh Hussein, you will be oppressed most brutally before you come to me. Prepare yourself, O Hussein. When Salama rushes to Hussein, she says, oh child, I hear you're setting off to Kufa. I beseech you for the sake of God, do not go, for you shall not return. How so? He says, oh grandmother, your grandfather has given me some dust. And this is verified by Shia and Sunni historians or Hadith. He has said, when this dust turns color and goes red, know that my son has been slain brutally. He said, oh grandmother, I know this very well, but I have no option. Imam Hussein prepares for departure. On the next night, under the cloak of darkness, somebody from Sham was there observing the scene. He said, I saw Hussein sat in the courtyard, and the Hashimis stood around him. Suddenly there was a cry, O sons of Hashim, lower your gazes. I saw a beautiful youth accompanying a woman draped in veil. He brought her to the carriage, kneeled, and she ascended. I asked, who was he? I was told, he is the apple of Hussein's eye, Akbar. And who was she? She was his mother. Once again, there was a call, O Hashimis, lower your gaze. I saw a majestic man appear. With him were two women. He knelt, and the two women ascended into their carriages. I asked, who was he? I was told, this is the moon of the Hashimis, Abbas. And who are they? They were his sisters, Zainab and Kulthum. I will say, Abbas, you allow them to enter within the carriage on this day. If only you could have seen their state and their cries. On the 11th of Muharram, Zainab's back is being whipped. She is being taken like captives, and she is ordered to ascend upon a camel without a carriage or a saddle. As she looks towards the Euphrates and she cries out, Wa Abbas, where are you on this day to take me into my carriage? Allah la'natullah al-qawmi al-zalimin. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. إلهي إنا نسألك بحق الحسين وجده وأبيه وأمه وأخيه وتسعة المعصومين من ذريته وبنيه. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. اللهم عجل فرج إمامنا المنتظر واجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه والمستشهدين بين يديه. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة.
Sorry about the technical difficulties we had there. Inshallah, from tomorrow it will be a lot better. But we would like to now begin the Q&A portion of the program. If you have a question and have not already submitted it, then please go to menti.com and type in the code 1765356 in order for us to receive your question. There are a few. I'm going to start by grouping them because a lot of them are related. So, my friend says that God is a figment of our imagination. How can I respond? And the one that's related to that is, you say he is with me. Why can't I feel him? You talk about the light within. Is that a sixth sense?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Sumaya, can you hear me properly?
Yes.
God is a figment of our imagination is very true. Because whatever we conceptualize about God is at the imaginal level. So he is within the mind in that sense. But if we look at God as he describes himself as existence at large. Now, we, in order to capture God most accurately, have to lose ourselves and flow into the acknowledgement of existence at large and feel him there. Before that stage, he will always belong to the mind and to the imagination. And we will not feel him save in a very diluted way. But once we begin to cleanse ourselves of ourselves, as we will be explaining in the lectures to come, what happens is we begin to lose ourselves and he begins to impose his presence upon us. And that is where that is where for the first time we come to finding God and feeling God. God is light within. What we mean by that is that this deep-seated yearning for meaning, that we find this restlessness within us, is that light of God trying to find itself and trying to find its origin. It's like a stream of water trying to find the ocean. It cannot understand what the ocean is until it flows into the ocean. So yes, sixth sense to an extent can be seen as the light of God. Our human aspiration to become brilliant human beings is also an aspect of the light of God. But most fundamentally, it's that inner yearning to find ourselves and who am I? That is the light of God, as I was trying to explain.
Great. The next question is, you mentioned the God of Abu Dhar is different than the God of Salman. Why does the traditional Shia Islam through the main Shia books of Hadith try to explain God in one way, as if it is the only way to understand God?
So this is something that we need to address, because when we read the Quran, we are so accustomed to reading it in a particular way that we do not see what the Quran is trying to say of itself. It's like that philosopher who says that when you define that flying being as a particular type of a bird, you never see it again. You never see the real thing again. You will always see what you have defined. But if you could let go of your presumptions and assumptions and read the Quran for what it's trying to say without any biases or preconceived ideas, then you will see a very nuanced understanding of God, a very different version of God emerging from the Quran. Not only are the prophets understanding God in their individual capacities and are different to each other. One is the Spirit of God, Isa. The other is Khalil of God, Ibrahim. Another one is Kalim of God, Musa. Another one is Habib of God, the Beloved. Not only shall we see different relationships different prophets have with God, we will also see different relationships every creational being has with God. And we will also see the different facets of God, different aspects of God and how he describes himself at once in a multiple, in a variety of different ways. So at one hand, he describes himself as the one who sculptures the being of Adam with his two hands. And on the other hand, he says there is nothing like him. And then he says he is the light of the heavens and the earth. And then he says wherever you turn, you will find him. So at one hand, at one instance, he describes himself as forming Adam with two hands. On the other hand, he is be all and end all of anything and everything we see, the first and the last. And then he says he is the unknowable one. So we need to open ourselves up to the Quran without any preconceived ideas and notions. And then we will see this variety displayed within the verses of the Quran.
Another two that are somewhat related. You mentioned if you follow the God of heaven, you'll become heavenly. And if you follow the God of hell, you will become wretched. Are you implying different gods for heaven and hell? Does this have implications from Hinduism? And the one that is related is if everyone has their own personal God, is there a way that this version could be wrong? If someone has a view of God that could be considered ethically and morally wrong, is that still correct? For example, if I believe that God allows stealing.
God allows what?
Stealing.
Stealing.
Like theft.
Yes. Okay, so the one who worships whatever we worship, we become like it. Our object of devotion determines our own internal motion. So if we conceive of God as the most beautiful one, we are beautified from within. If we conceive of God as the one who will give us paradise, then he will give us paradise. If we conceive of God as unforgiving, as uncompromising, then we become unforgiving, uncompromising, and as a result, we go to hell. Now, this is not multiplicity of God. This is the multiplicity of the facets of God. We are addressed in our own human condition in the way we are. So God reveals himself to us in our human condition. God reveals himself to Jibreel in a very different way that Jibreel can relate to, in accordance with the nature of Jibreel. What I was trying to say there was that we need to, in our own selves, move from a God that is limited within ourselves to embrace the most beautiful God. So I gave that example that the harshness that God displays is within the ambit of his compassion. Just like a parent, when parent reprimands a child, it is with the view of what is good for the child, and therefore it is through mercy. But if the child just takes the aspect of reprimand and the harshness of the parent, then the child would become a very harsh individual. But if a child can understand that this harshness comes through care and love, then the child will be able to transcend the initial harshness and embrace the beautiful love that is the cause of harshness. That is what I was trying to say.
If you can, in short, how do we clean ourselves to get the proximity to God besides our ritual worship practices?
So we will be explaining this in the course of these lectures, that the only way there is to remove ourselves from ourselves, because we are the veil upon the light of God. And we disfigure this light of God. And we will explain how the beautiful light of God can add towards a demonic force and how we become demons by misdirecting that beautiful yearning that is within us. And Allah says he purges us from darkness into light. This darkness is our own ego. So the worship in Islam, the ceremonial worship, is not made incumbent for its own self. It is made incumbent for the sake of purifying us from our own ego and arrogance. So if we can reflect on the majesty of God and the beauty of God, and if that can humble us from within, then we are achieving that purpose.
There is this notion that we should stop doing anything during Muharram and Safar except for mourning the Imam. How does this make us closer to God? Isn't it better to think and do introspection instead, similar to how we view Ramadan?
So first and foremost, the day of mourning for Imam Hussain was confined to the day of Ashura. With the passage of time, we extended it to 3 days and then 10 days and then 2.5 months. So it's nothing as such to do with religion. It is more to do with the cultures formed around Imam Hussain. So stopping life during Muharram has got nothing to do with religion. In fact, the Imams did not suspend their lives. And who are the children of the Blessed Imam Hussain. And constantly engaging in azadari, if it is not yielding godliness, then there is something amiss, something has gone wrong. So definitely introspection is a form of highest devotion. So for sure, go for introspection. So now the question of stealing. If I worship a God that condones stealing, then I become a demon, okay? It's like the people who are Muslims, who in the name of God carry out barbaric actions. So they are worshiping a very barbaric God and they are becoming like him. Now, the question comes, does God condone that? God, as God, wants productivity, the increase of light. The increase of light cannot come with any action that is contrary to production. Because production means for us to relieve ourselves of our restriction and arrive at the fullness of our growth. So then why do we steal? It is a misplaced yearning for God. How? God is the possessor of all kingdom. Inevitably, we want to be possessors of the whole kingdom in its entirety. But when we try to emulate God's ownership within the constraints of humanity, that is where things go wrong. Because at that point then, we resort to everything within the bodily context, not realizing that being poor is to become wealthy. But we try to emulate God in a very misdirected way through the body, in a bodily fashion of owning things. And that's why we are impelled towards stealing.
Thank you very much. I think we will end there. Thank you very much, Sheikh, again, for the insightful talk and answers. I look forward to hearing from you again tomorrow. I would like to end with a request for Surah Fatiha for those who are no longer with us.